This is Kachari Mudra. When your tongue is resting in your mouth, it is in the wide gate, but when you place it up your nasal pharynx, you go in through the straight gate and ultimately through the narrow passageway up to the 10th gate. Sexually, you are one half of a whole, but spiritually, you are complete. You have both a phallus, your tongue, and a yoni, your nasal pharynx. This is what Jesus referred to when he spoke about the bridal chamber, from the Gospel of Philip. For the Father anointed the Son, and the Son anointed the apostles, and the apostles anoint us. He who has been anointed possesses everything. He possesses the resurrection, the light, the cross, the Holy Spirit. The Father gave him this in the bridal chamber. He merely accepted the gift. The Father was in the Son, and the Son in the Father. This is the kingdom of heaven. Those who are separated will unite and will be filled. Everyone who will enter the bridal chamber will kindle the light. The purpose of a mudra is to redirect the energy flows in the body. The reason Kachari Mudra is known as the king of all mudras is because of the benefit it bestows. Number 1, the ability to stop the breath or go breathless, which quiets the mind considerably. Number 2, it completes the electric circuit. It attaches the spine to the brain. Number 3, allows the sadhaka to balance the nadis, which then makes the electricity of the body go up the Sushumna or Brahma nadi. Number 4, allows the sadhaka to rub a nerve center, which leads to dharana, or one-pointedness of mind. Number 5, turns on your kundalini or opens up the knot at Muladhara chakra. Number 6, allows the sadhaka to push on a nerve center, shutting off all sensory perception. Number 7, allows the sadhaka to drink from the fountain of youth, or King Arthur's holy grail. Absorption of the liquid the brain makes, which is also known as ayahuasca, amrit, or DMT with the tongue, separates the consciousness from the mind. This is the land of milk and honey. Now that is quite a list there, so let's talk about them one at a time. Number 1, Kachari Mudra gives you the ability to stop the breath or go breathless, which quiets the mind considerably. The ability to go breathless or stop the breath. That is impossible, you say. Someone would die if they stopped breathing. Do you believe you were breathing when you were a baby in your mother's tummy? That is different, you say, because your mother was supplying you with oxygen. Would it surprise you to know that the air you breathe in is 21% oxygen and the air you breathe out is 17% oxygen? Plus you are breathing out oxygen in the form of CO2. If oxygen was so important, why are you breathing so much of it out? Have you ever noticed that when you swim underwater for a minute or so and then come up for breath, the first thing that you do is exhale? You don't inhale first, you exhale. Apparently the body is more concerned with getting the carbon out of the body than it is getting oxygen in. The great yogi Shivananda, who was also a medical doctor, taught that we inhale to get the prana, or electricity from the outside air, into our lungs so it can be distributed to the body. If you think about our breathing apparatus, you notice at the top of it we exhale and inhale from a Y, with the mouth and the nasal passage being the top of the Y and the lungs being the bottom. The vacuum, followed by pressure from the diaphragm contracting and then relaxing, causes the breath to be turbulent, mixing up the outgoing and incoming air. This turbulence creates an environment that is very inefficient in its flow to dispose the toxic air, carbon dioxide, and get what is needed into the body, prana and oxygen. This causes a lot of unnecessary work for the body. When the breath stops, carbon dioxide forms a stream that peacefully slides out of the body. A straight spine with the chin slightly pulled in enables this stream to form much quicker. Just a cursory glance at a nasal diagram and you can see that the passageways are set up to separate the incoming from the outgoing air. This can easily be verified by a 10-second experiment. Pay attention to where the air is coming from when you exhale and where the air is going when you inhale. The exhales are coming from the upper chamber of the nose where the carbon dioxide accumulates, and the inhales are going into the lower chambers of the nose. Of course, the divine designed us so that when the diaphragm stops contracting, the carbon dioxide forms a peaceful stream and exits the body on its own. When the tongue blocks off the outgoing air from entering the mouth, the air cannot stimulate the nerves at the roof of the mouth that send an electrical signal to the diaphragm to contract. Kachari Mudra ends the gift of breath that you were given at birth when the amniotic fluid was forced out of your lungs by the doctor who turned you over and patted you on the back. Number 2, completes the electric circuit. Kachari Mudra attaches the spine to the brain. There is a gap between your spinal column and the brain. This gap is bridged by what is called the brainstem and can easily be seen in this picture. We have all heard that we utilize a small fraction of our brain. This concept is misunderstood by many people. You do use 100% of your brain. It's just that the mind only has the capacity or capability to use a small portion of it at one time. Whereas when you can transcend the mind, you can then utilize 100% of your brain at the same time. This has been demonstrated by scientific experiments monitoring yogis in deep meditation called samadhi. When you take into consideration that every one of our 100 billion neurons may be connected to 10,000 other neurons, sending information through synaptic connections, it doesn't take much literacy in mathematics to understand that the capability of utilizing 100% of the brain is not a tenfold increase in comprehension over utilizing 10% of the brain, but an exponential one. This sounds all great and everything, but what exactly does transcending the mind mean? You must shut down everything that is powering it up. This includes all sensory perception, your breathing apparatus, circulatory system, and digestive system. Be still and know that I am God. Looking at the picture, you can clearly see that there is a gap in the spinal column that is bridged by the lower brain, sometimes known as the reptilian brain, that is only concerned with fight or flight, survival and procreation, food, sex, and wanting to be the biggest, brightest peacock in the world. This is where our ego and desires come from. Everybody wants to be Chief Big Feather with all the adornments, and these desires will continue as long as the electricity is flowing through this brainstem. With the practice of Kachari Mudra, the tongue acts like a fuse and redirects the electricity of the body from the medulla oblongata to the pineal gland. You can see from this picture the results from diverting this electrical flow. The uvula conducts the electricity and burns up the frenulum, which is the ligament that binds the tongue to the bottom of the mouth. You can clearly see the hard white scabs that appeared underneath my tongue from the practice of Kachari Mudra. The burning up of the frenulum allowed my tongue to go further and further up the nasal pharynx and eventually opened up my Vishuddha chakra. The goal of yoga is to connect the consciousness or anahata chakra to the ajna chakra through the Brahma Nadi, which runs right up the center of the Sushumna. In English, this is known as the central nervous system. This connects your soul with your Christ consciousness, which will then allow you to tap into the cosmic consciousness. You don't want the electricity to flow through the medulla oblongata because that brings about body consciousness, or as Jesus put it, you serve mammon. You want the electricity to flow through the tongue right to the pituitary gland. This is a multi-stage process. The nadis must be opened, balanced, and cleared. Slowly over time, the Sushumna is able to carry an increasingly load of electricity. When the electricity gets strong enough, chakras open and the tongue eventually busts through the 10th gate, allowing you to drink from the Holy Grail or taste the Amrita. When the pituitary gland is stimulated with this electricity, copious amounts of this nectar is produced. When this nectar makes it into the bloodstream, samadhi takes place. This nectar anesthetizes the brainstem. A powered-down brainstem would explain the near-death experiences that people have had where their heart stopped and they experienced peace, love, warmth, felt the presence of the divine, etc. What happened to them is their body really did die and the electricity stopped flowing to the brainstem. When their heart started back up again, sensory perceptions returned, sending electricity back to the brainstem and body consciousness returned. For a brief amount of time, they experience what yogis experience in samadhi when they divert the electricity from the lower brainstem, stimulating the pituitary and pineal gland to produce the Amrita. A Wikipedia search on parts of the brain reveals the following information. The medulla oblongata is the lower half of the brainstem that connects the higher levels of the brain to the spinal cord, the upper half being the pons. The medulla contains the cardiac, respiratory, and vasomotor centers and deals with autonomic, involuntary functions, such as breathing, heart rate, and blood pressure, sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. The pons is part of the brainstem that links the medulla oblongata and the thalamus. The pons contains nuclei that relays signals from the forebrain to the cerebellum, along with nuclei that deal primarily with sleep, respiration, swallowing, bladder control, hearing, equilibrium, taste, eye movement, facial expressions, facial sensations, and posture. The thalamus is perched on top of the brainstem, right above the pons, near the center of the brain, with nerve fibers projecting out to the cerebral cortex in all directions. The thalamus has multiple functions. It may be thought of as kind of a switchboard of information. It is generally believed to act as a relay between a variety of subcortical areas and the cerebral cortex. In particular, every sensory system includes a thalamic nucleus that receives sensory signals and sends them to the associated primal cortical area. The thymus would still be active in stage 4 of Kachari, just receiving electricity from the tongue instead of the senses. Notice that the brainstem is all about the senses, respiration, and circulation, the very things we are supposed to shut down to reach Nirvikalpa Samadhi. When the breath shuts down, part of the mind shuts down. When the breath stops, the time-based reality stops. Thinking about the past and the future happens only when you make a concerted effort to focus on it. When you can shut off the senses, you make it to Samadhi, or the void. When you raise the Kundalini through the Brahmanadi, with the energy going to the Sahasrara, enlightenment takes place. The key is directing where and how the electricity flows in your body. From the book Mijda, a book about the early life of Yogananda. During the practice of Kriya, the prana, and therefore the mind or consciousness, withdraws from the senses and pierces the cerebral spinal chakras as it's drawn upward and becomes settled at the top of the Sushumna. Through the performance of Kachari Mudra, that divine life current draws the prana from the senses into the spine and directs it up through the chakras to the universal spirit, uniting the consciousness with spirit. The entire body is thereby spiritualized and energized. As a result, a perceptible glow may emanate from the body. The goal of yoga is to bypass the brainstem or transcend the mind. Basically, what Jesus was saying in Matthew 6:22 is that the electricity in the body can flow or take one of two paths, heaven or hell. When thine eye is single, other interpretations say clear or good, the electricity flows to the Ajna chakra or third eye, and when the electricity flows through the brainstem, you see through your physical eyes. One path gives you body consciousness, the other gives you God consciousness. Number 3, Kachari Mudra allows the Sadhaka to balance the nadis, which then makes the electricity of the body go up the Sushumna or Brahma Nadi. Jesus said in the Gospel of Thomas, if two make peace with each other in this one house, they will say to the mountain, move away, and it will move away. As I spoke about earlier, you have 3 main nadis where the electricity flows in your body. The central nervous system, in yoga parlance, this is known as the Sushumna, the parasympathetic nervous system, or Ida Nadi, and the sympathetic nervous system, or Pingala Nadi. When you have a sensory experience, the electricity flows through 2 different systems in the body, both the parasympathetic nervous system, Ida, and the sympathetic nervous system, Pingala. The Ida Nadi is responsible for telling you what you are experiencing. The Pingala Nadi is responsible for the fight or flight response, and so it can't waste time trying to figure out what it is you are experiencing, because it could possibly be life-threatening. The Pingala puts the electrical sensation through the catalog of sensations that you've already experienced, and if deemed to be threatening, immediately takes the appropriate bodily response. It is the reconciliation of these 2 signals that come in from the same experience that causes thought or vibration. Think about how your body reacts when it hears a loud noise. There are 2 reactions. One primes the body for action while waiting for instructions. If there is pain involved, such as touching a hot stove, the sympathetic nervous system withdraws from the source before getting instructions from the parasympathetic nervous system. As long as the Ajna chakra is not open, you will experience the world through these two systems that bring about body consciousness. As long as the energy is predominantly traveling through the Ida or Pingala Nadi, your brain is imbalanced, and you will remain in body consciousness. The breath brings prana into the body, causing this imbalance. As I spoke about earlier, Swami Shivananda taught that we don't breathe for the oxygen in the air, we breathe for the prana, or to get the electricity in the air into our lungs. The body places a positive charge to all the prana that you breathe in through your right nostril, and a negative charge to all the prana that you breathe in through your left nostril. Positive prana powers up the sympathetic nervous system, or the Pingala Nadi in yogic terms, and the negative prana powers up the parasympathetic nervous system, or Ida Nadi. This prana travels down to the Muladhara chakra, and then depending on which nadi is currently dominant, starts spinning the chakras to the right or to the left, depending on which nostril is currently providing the majority of the air. When the polarity of the body switches and the nostrils alternate their dominance, the rotation of the chakra first slows down, stops, and then changes direction of its spin. In yogic terms, it is not important which direction the chakras are spinning, because as long as the chakras spin, the prana is being used to experience the external world. When you balance the polarity long enough so that the Muladhara chakra stops spinning, the chakra opens and the prana starts traveling up the central nervous system. This internalizes your consciousness and your spiritual journey begins. The practice of a breathing technique known as Nadi Shodhana, Anuloma Viloma, or alternate nostril breathing brings about a balance of the Ida Nadi and Pingala Nadi so that the electricity starts flowing up the Sushumna. When the nadis are balanced, the nostrils open up and dilate. Many people have practiced this breathing technique in yoga classes. Using the fingers to close off the nostrils is cumbersome and distracting, whereas using the tongue internally to do this takes a lot less effort. This is achieved by sticking the tongue up the nasal pharynx and up one of the nostrils, sealing it off like a cork in a bottle. The inner ears that cover the Eustachian tubes are physiologically designed to help you turn your tongue sideways so it can slide up the turbinate area of your nostril to the 10th gate. Gachari Mudra also gives you the added benefit of the next topic, which is number 4, allows the sadhaka to rub a nerve center, which leads to dharana, or one-pointedness of mind. At the top of your nasal septum is a bundle of nerves. When the tongue touches this area, you can feel the electricity flowing through the tongue. The uvula is actually a transformer and uses this electricity to burn up the rest of the frenulum, allowing your tongue to go deeper into Gachari. Most people have a hard time meditating because the mind and the 5 senses act as telephones, constantly ringing, demanding your attention. When the tongue makes a connection with the top of the nasal septum, a buzz is felt that is almost sexual in nature. Everybody has had the tingly feeling that you feel when you are about to sneeze, but for some reason you can't quite sneeze. Suddenly you feel the sneeze coming on, and a sense of relief and a buzz is felt in the upper nasal area. Gachari Mudra allows you to rub these nerves and brings about this feeling. This feeling draws the attention away from the senses and the desires of the mind, and you focus on the contact that is made with the tongue. Number 5, Gachari Mudra assists in turning on your Kundalini, or opens up the knot at the Muladhara chakra. This is a big one because basically I'm telling you that you have something in your body that is dormant that you are not aware of. Throughout your life, you may have had glimpses of the electrical nature of the world and your body. For example, when my There is a bundle of nerves above the nasal turbinate area where the sensory perceptions of the eyes, ears, nose, and mouth go through. When your Kachari has advanced far enough, you can push on this bone, which causes a compression of these nerves and stops all nerve signals from reaching the brainstem. With no electricity going to the brainstem, the mind shuts down, freeing the consciousness. In yoga parlance, this is called samadhi. You can see that the bone that you press on extends out like a diving board, and the bones supporting it are designed to bend, allowing this compression to take place. Number 7, Kachari Mudra allows the sadhaka to drink from the fountain of youth, or King Arthur's Holy Grail. The liquid the brain makes is contained in this cup-like bone, is also known as ayahuasca by the shamans in the rainforest, Amrita by the yogis, and DMT by